Hey everyone, it's Taehyung. Before we begin, I want you to take a deep breath with me, not as fans, not as an audience, but as people who care about each other. If you're here right now watching this video, I want you to know something before anything else. Thank you. Thank you for showing up even when it's easier to walk away. Thank you for holding space for me even when the world is loud and cruel. And thank you for not giving up on me when I was close to giving up on myself. Tonight, I'm not here as idol Kim Taehyung, not as BTS V, not as someone the industry expects to smile perfectly and never make mistakes. I'm here as a human being, someone who hurts, who feels deeply, and who sometimes loses control when the weight becomes too heavy. You've probably seen the headlines. You've probably seen that video. You've probably heard 1,000 versions of the story told by people who weren't there, by people who don't know me, but this time, you'll hear it from me. This isn't a scandal video. This isn't damage control. This isn't a PR stunt. This is truth, raw, unfiltered, and maybe imperfect. And that's okay, because I'm done trying to be perfect. I'm done pretending that I don't feel anger, sadness, frustration, and disappointment. I'm done apologizing for being human. And if the world wants to hate me for that, then let them. Because the people who truly love me will stay. If you decide to continue watching this video until the end, don't watch it because I'm a celebrity. Watch it because it is a story about someone who finally spoke up after years of silence. Someone who reached a moment where pretending became more painful than honesty. So sit down, take a breath, and listen not to the controversy, but to my heart. Because everything you're about to hear, every word, every moment, every tear, every regret, every truth happened. And tonight, I'm ready to share it with you. I never expected the night to unfold the way it did. I remember standing backstage at the Tonight Show, fixing the last button of my suit, thinking about how grateful I felt to finally share my new music with the world. The audience was roaring even before I walked out, and for a moment I allowed myself to smile. I thought this night would be simple connection, honesty, music. I didn't know I was walking into a trap. When they called my name, I stepped onto the stage, and the lights nearly blinded me. Fans screamed. Some were crying, waving banners and posters. I could see purple light sticks even though this wasn't a concert. I bowed and waved, wanting to give everyone comfort, warmth, something to remember. That's all I ever wanted, to make people feel something good. Jimmy greeted me with his usual energy, and I returned it politely. I crossed my legs, adjusted my mic, and prepared myself for a conversation about my album, my creative process, and the new chapter of my life. Everything started the way it should have, until it didn't. When Jimmy leaned forward and asked why I unfollowed a BTS member months ago, I froze, not because I didn't know how to respond, but because that question wasn't supposed to exist on that stage. Before I signed the contract, I made it clear: no personal controversy, no drama, no rumors. I came to talk about art, not to entertain the dark side of the internet. I felt millions of eyes on me, fans at home, the audience in the studio, cameras capturing every twitch on my face. I controlled my expression, but inside I was tired. Not angry, just tired. tired of people thinking pain and conflict are entertainment. I looked Jimmy straight in the eyes and told him the question was inappropriate. I wasn't rude. I didn't raise my voice. I simply told the truth. But I could see it instantly. My answer wasn't what they wanted. It wasn't scandalous enough. It wasn't messy enough. My boundaries weren't profitable. Suddenly his smile changed. It wasn't friendly anymore. And from that moment on, the interview wasn't a conversation, it was a chase. I could feel they wanted to control the narrative, push for emotion, push for breaking headlines. I stayed calm. I answered only what I came there to answer. I protected myself and the people I love. But then Jimmy went further. He pulled out paparazzi photos and slid them across the table like evidence in a courtroom. Photos of me walking beside a woman, a personal moment stolen from me. And he said, "Then let's talk about this. Who is she?" Everyone gasped. Some laughed, others screamed. And my heart dropped, not because I was ashamed, but because I realized something painfully familiar. No matter how much good you do, some people only want to feed on your privacy. I looked at those photos for maybe 1 second, and something in me clicked. I stood up. I wasn't going to let my career, my friendships, or my personal life be turned into entertainment for shock value. Not again. Not ever. I said, "This interview is over." I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I didn't curse. I simply walked away from a situation that didn't deserve me. The audience panicked. Jimmy tried to stop me. The staff moved toward me. Someone grabbed my arm lightly and told me I couldn't exit the stage. Then came the words, "I'll never forget. The show must continue. Sit back down." It was the first time in my career where someone physically tried to stop me from walking away. I pulled my arm back and told them firmly, "I'm done." In those seconds, I stopped being an entertainer and became myself, Kim Taehyung, a human being with boundaries. They hated that. They didn't want a person, they wanted a spectacle. The broadcast cut abruptly. Security entered the stage. I was told to leave the studio immediately, not because I caused trouble, but because I refused to be controlled. And that's how the headline was born. BTS Taehyung removed from Jimmy Fallon's show after explosive on-air confrontation. People think that moment broke me, but the truth is that moment saved me. It reminded me who I am, what I stand for, and what I will never let the world take away from me again. And that was only the beginning. When they escorted me off the stage, the noise didn't stop. I could still hear the audience shouting, staff running, cameras being disabled, producers yelling into headsets. It felt like the whole building was shaking. I kept walking straight down the hallway, refusing to look back, but the weight of everything pressed against my chest. Not because I regretted anything, but because I knew the world was about to twist the story before I could speak for myself. A staff member ran behind me, begging me to return to my seat, saying it would look bad if the interview ended that way. I didn't slow down. I didn't give them the reaction they wanted. I took a deep breath and said, "What looks bad is disrespect." My voice wasn't loud, but it was final. I think that scared them more than if I had screamed. When I reached the backstage room they assigned to me, three producers were already waiting. They tried to smile, but the tension in their eyes spoke louder than words. They asked me to finish the interview professionally, even if it meant pretending nothing happened. I almost laughed. Pretending has never been who I am. I told them calmly that professionalism includes boundaries, respect, and honesty, and none of those were present on that stage. That's when the tone changed. Their voices rose. They said I ruined the show, that I embarrassed the network, that walking off was immature. I stood there silently and let them speak because I knew nothing I said would change their minds. They weren't upset about respect. They were upset because I didn't create the drama they were counting on. Finally, one of them looked me dead in the eyes and asked, "Do you realize what you just did to your image?" I answered, "I protected it." They hated that answer. The room froze. No noise, no argument, just shock. Because they expected me to crumble under pressure. They expected guilt, fear, compliance. They expected me to care more about popularity than dignity. But I've been in this industry long enough to understand something powerful. The moment you let someone control you, you'll never get your freedom back. They told me I had to leave the building immediately. It was supposed to humiliate me, but I didn't panic. I picked up my coat, thanked a frightened staff member who had been silently standing by the door, and walked out on my own, not pushed, not dragged, not defeated. The hallway was chaotic. Assistants were crying, phones were ringing nonstop, and security tried to clear the path for me. One of the camera crew whispered, "I'm sorry," as I passed. I smiled at him softly because I knew none of this was his fault. Everyone was just doing what they were told except me. When the exit door shut behind me, the world outside felt impossibly loud. My phone was already overflowing, dozens of missed calls, hundreds of messages, notifications, flooding so quickly, the screen kept freezing. Armies, friends, journalists, strangers, brands, executives, everyone wanted something. I ignored all of it. I got into the car, leaned back, and closed my eyes. For the first time since the interview started, I let myself breathe. I thought about the fans who stayed up all night just to watch me. I thought about my family, my members, and the people who knew my heart long before the world discovered my name. I wasn't ashamed. I wasn't angry. I just needed silence. But silence doesn't exist in the era of the internet. Within minutes, the headlines emerged, not even accurate, not even close to the truth. Every platform was flooded with versions of the story written by people who weren't even there. Taehyung storms off Tonight Show, stage in explosive rage. Taehyung loses control during interview. Fallon victim of aggressive celebrity meltdown. Aggressive meltdown storms off. Funny how the world always finds violent words to describe calm resistance. I stared at the screen and finally whispered to myself, "They don't fear the truth, they fear losing control of the narrative." I knew my silence would be twisted. I knew my side of the story would be drowned in speculation and lies. I knew the next few hours would decide how the world saw me, either as a disaster or as a human being. That was the moment I realized I didn't just walk off a stage. I walked into a war. Now the question wasn't whether I was right. The question was how much of me the world would try to destroy before the truth came out. And I was about to learn that the fallout from walking away was much bigger than I ever expected. Because the next call I received, the one I didn't expect, was from someone who changed everything. The car was quiet, but my mind wasn't. I kept replaying the moment I stood up and walked away. Not because I doubted myself, but because I knew what the world does to people who refuse to play along. I stared out the window, watching the city blur by, and I wondered how fast everything was going to fall apart. Then my phone rang. It wasn't a manager, it wasn't the company, it wasn't a journalist. It was a BTS member. The name on the screen hit me like a punch to the chest. For a moment, I didn't know if I should answer. Not because I was afraid, but because I didn't want to worry them. I didn't want anyone to blame themselves for something that wasn't their fault. But I picked up, and the moment I heard his voice, everything inside me cracked open. Taehyung, are you okay? He didn't sound angry. He didn't sound disappointed. He sounded worried, like a brother watching his family get hurt and not knowing how to fix it. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until he said, "You don't have to talk, just breathe. I'm here." I leaned back against the car seat and closed my eyes. I whispered, "I'm fine." But even I could hear the exhaustion in my voice. He didn't sugarcoat anything. He told me the headlines were already exploding. Twitter was on fire. YouTube was flooded with commentary videos, and brands were already calling our team, trying to distance themselves for safety. He told me armies were rallying, already trending hashtags demanding the Tonight Show release the unedited footage. He told me fans were angry, not at me, but at the network. And then he said something I will never forget. "You did the right thing. You protected yourself. I'm proud of you." I didn't need praise. I didn't need applause. But hearing that from someone who knew every version of me, the scared version, the confident version, the broken version, the hopeful version, it meant everything. I didn't speak. I couldn't. I just listened to him breathe on the other end of the line. Sometimes silence between people who love each other is the loudest comfort in the world. Before hanging up, he added, "Whatever happens next, you're not alone. Don't ever think you have to fight alone." When the call ended, I stared at my reflection in the dark screen of my phone. I saw someone who was exhausted but not defeated. I saw someone who refused to let fame erase his humanity. And I finally allowed a single tear to fall, not from pain, but from relief. But relief doesn't last long when the whole world is watching. My phone started vibrating nonstop again. Not from journalists or brands, but from fans. Thousands of messages poured into my feed. Some people were furious on my behalf, some were crying, and some were begging me to speak publicly. They wanted clarity. They wanted my voice. They wanted a statement fast before the media rewrote the story completely. A part of me wanted to go live immediately to tell the truth without filters or edits. I imagined myself saying, "I'm not a toy, I'm not a scandal, I'm a person." But then I imagined the consequences not for me, but for the people around me. Everyone who worked with me, everyone I cared about, everyone who could be dragged into the fire because of my impulse to defend myself. Being a celebrity means you're never protecting just yourself. So I stayed quiet. That silence hurt more than any lie the media printed. The car drove through the city while phones all around the world were lighting up. Hashtags climbed to number one. Fans live streamed in groups, crying and comforting each other. Some stood outside the Tonight Show building, holding banners and purple lights, screaming my name, refusing to go home. They weren't protesting for an idol, they were fighting for a human being they believed deserved dignity. Seeing that support should have made everything easier, but it didn't. Because every time someone defended me online, someone else tried to drag me down harder. Every time ARMY trended a hashtag, another wave of hate comments followed. Every time someone said I did the right thing, another article called me arrogant, spoiled, unprofessional. That's when the anxiety hit, that cold, heavy pressure in the chest you can't control no matter how deep you breathe. I didn't break down, but the fear was there. The fear that the world would decide who I was before I could say it myself. My phone lit up with a message from my manager. We need to release a statement immediately. Call me. I stared at the message for a long time. If I spoke, I risked war. If I stayed silent, I risked my reputation. That night wasn't just a scandal. It was a crossroads. And I knew whatever I chose next would change everything. Not just for my career, but for my identity. Was I going to protect myself quietly? Or was I going to fight back publicly and let the world finally hear my voice? I didn't know it yet, but the decision I made in the next 24 hours would be the most defining moment of my career since debut. And the world was not ready for what I was about to do. When I arrived at the apartment, the first thing I did was sit on the floor, not the couch, not the bed, the floor. It felt grounding, like the only solid thing left in a world that suddenly turned into noise and distortion. I hadn't eaten, I hadn't rested. Every notification felt like a knock on the door from someone wanting a piece of my life. Before I could gather myself, there was a knock for real. Management. I opened the door, and their expressions told me everything. Fear, stress, pressure, and expectation. The kind that didn't ask how I was doing, but what I was going to do to protect the brand. They entered, laptops in hand, documents loaded, articles pulled up on multiple screens. They didn't waste time. We need to fix this before it gets worse. I wanted to laugh, not because it was funny, but because of how predictable it all was. The world tries to break you, and instead of asking if you're okay, people ask what you're going to sacrifice to make everyone else comfortable again. They sat across from me and pushed a digital document toward me, a pre-written statement for me to post on social media. I didn't even need to read it fully. The first sentence was enough to make my hands go numb. I apologize for my unprofessional behavior and disrespectful exit during the Tonight Show. Unprofessional, disrespectful. Two words I refused to wear like a costume. I looked at them and said quietly, I didn't do anything wrong. They sighed that tired corporate sigh reserved for artists who forget their products. One of them told me this wasn't about right or wrong. It was about damage control. Sponsors were calling. Brands were nervous. The Tonight Show wanted a public apology. They said, my reputation depended on my cooperation. I said nothing. Silence is the most powerful answer when someone is hoping to scare you. Finally, another manager tried a softer approach. He said, Taehyung, just sign this, post it, and everything will go back to normal. Normal. That word triggered something deep inside me because normal for me meant hiding. It meant swallowing disrespect. It meant letting myself be used as entertainment even when it hurt. It meant smiling when the world poked every wound I tried to heal. I realized I was done chasing normal. I pushed the statement back toward them. I won't apologize for protecting myself. Their faces tightened. Panic set in. They raised their voices, not yelling, but pleading, bargaining, threatening consequences without saying the word consequences. They told me I would lose fans, that I would lose endorsements, that the public would turn on me, that silence would kill my career. I looked them in the eyes and answered, if my career depends on letting people disrespect me, then I don't want that career. That was when everything changed. The room went still. Phones stopped ringing. No typing, no whispering, just shock. I think it was the first moment they realized I wasn't breaking. Not tonight. And then I dropped the decision I had been turning over in my mind the entire drive home. I told them, I'm going to speak publicly in my voice, not yours. They froze, horrified. I continued, not a written statement, not an apology. I'm going to go live and I'm going to tell the truth. One of them stood up instantly and said, absolutely not. You can't go unscripted. You'll make things worse. You'll reveal too much. I shook my head. You're afraid of the truth, not the mistakes. They tried to stop me, telling me it would destroy everything. But they didn't understand something essential. I was already destroyed the moment I let other people speak for me. I told them, you can stay and support me, or you can step aside, but I'm not letting anyone else decide who I am. They looked at me with fear, not for my safety, but for their loss of control. Finally, one of them whispered, if you go live and criticize the show, the network will blacklist you. I nodded slowly. Then blacklist me. Because I'd rather be banned from 1,000 stages than lose myself on one. They left. None of them slammed the door. They didn't need to. Silence was louder. I sat alone in the living room again, exhaustion and determination fighting inside of me. The idea of going live terrified me more than anything I'd ever done. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because once I pressed that button, there would be no going back. One sentence from me could rewrite everything. One truth could change the entire narrative. But the world wasn't going to wait. Hate kept multiplying. Lies kept spreading. My silence was becoming a weapon against me. I picked up my phone. My hand shook not from fear, but from the weight of the moment. I clicked go live, and the screen lit up instantly, 100,000 viewers in 5 seconds, then 200,000, then 500,000. The comments flew so quickly I could barely see them. I took a deep breath. For the first time in years, I wasn't performing. I wasn't smiling for the camera. I wasn't acting. I was just Kim Taehyung, a man who had reached his breaking point. And with millions watching, I finally opened my mouth to tell the world everything. When the car finally slowed to a stop outside my apartment, I felt like I had aged 10 years in the span of an hour. The city lights blurred outside the window, exactly like my thoughts scattered, suffocating, and begging for a moment of silence. I pushed the car door open and stepped out, expecting the night to swallow me whole. Instead, it greeted me with screams. Fans, hundreds of them. Cameras flashing, banners, tears, voices yelling my name like a lifeline they were terrified to lose. Taehyung will love you. We're here for you no matter what. You did nothing wrong. For a second, I froze. I didn't know whether to cry, collapse, or beg them all to stop. My throat tightened and my chest pulsed painfully because while the world was tearing me apart here, they were still choosing me. A security guard whispered, Taehyung, see, we can clear them if you want. But I shook my head. I walked toward them. Cameras lowered, voices softened. Everyone waited not for an idol, not for a celebrity, but for a human being who was hurting. I wasn't supposed to talk. PR had already sent a dozen messages ordering me to stay silent. Let the company handle it. Let the lawyers handle it. Let the internet fight it out. But tonight, my heart didn't care about rules. I spoke anyway. Thank you for being here, I said, and my voice cracked badly. I know what you saw today was shocking. I never wanted to fight. I never wanted conflict, not with anyone. But I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. They kept listening. No interruptions, just love. I'm not angry, I continued, tears building again. I'm just tired of pretending that I don't feel anything. Tired of being told to stay quiet when my heart is screaming to speak. I wiped my eyes and shook my head weakly. I didn't go to the show today to start a fight. I went there to be honest. Maybe too honest. Maybe the world doesn't want honesty from people like us. Someone in the crowd yelled, We want it! We want you! That broke me. I covered my mouth as the tears finally fell. But before I could spiral again, the crowd started singing, not screaming, not chanting, singing Sweet Night, softly, gently, like a warm blanket over ice. And I realized something. I wasn't fighting Jimmy. I wasn't fighting a show. I wasn't fighting the industry. I was fighting for my right to exist without apology. I couldn't stay long, the crowd understood. Security walked me toward the elevator, but before the doors closed, someone reached out and handed me a small folded note. Inside, in shaky handwriting, it said, Even if the whole world pushed you out, there will always be a place where you belong. I pressed the note to my chest when the elevator doors sealed shut. The silence finally returned, but this time it didn't scare me. For the first time since walking off that stage, I felt a spark of strength. Not because everyone online believed me, not because the media suddenly changed its tune, but because I remembered something I had completely forgotten while trying to survive fame. I'm still human. I'm allowed to feel. And I don't have to apologize for it. I walked into my apartment and closed the door behind me. The world was still outside, still loud, still angry, but I wasn't broken anymore. I looked into the empty room and whispered to myself, This is not the end. There was more truth to tell, more to confront, and more to fight for, but not tonight. Tonight, I would breathe. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even try. I lay on the couch fully dressed, staring at the ceiling while the world outside continued spinning, breaking, defending, doubting, loving, hating. My phone buzzed nonstop on the coffee table, an endless stream of notifications, articles, trending hashtags, reaction videos, accusations, apologies, noise. At 5:12 a.m., I finally picked up the phone, not to scroll, not to defend myself online, but to call someone I had been avoiding, someone whose voice mattered more than anyone else's. Namjoon Hyung. The phone rang once, twice, three times. Then he answered, voice thick with sleep. Taehyunga? I didn't speak at first. I didn't even breathe. Then everything poured out before I could stop it. I'm tired, Hyung. I'm so tired. And I don't know who I'm supposed to be anymore. Everyone has a version of me they want. Everyone has expectations. Everyone has opinions. Tonight, I realized maybe I've lost myself somewhere along the way. There was silence, not cold silence, but the kind that listens. Then he said softly, no, you didn't lose yourself. The world tried to take you. That's different. My throat burned. I shut my eyes. I walked off the show, Hyung. It was messy. I was angry. I don't even know if I should be proud or ashamed. Namjoon exhaled. You should be human. No PR script, no strategy, just truth. You're not wrong for speaking your heart, he continued. But now you need to decide what's next. Not for the industry, not for the fans, not for the rumors, for you. I looked across my apartment, dark, quiet, honest, and something heavy began to shift. What if the world hates me for it? I whispered. They won't, he said. And if some do, let them. The right people will stay. The right people? Those words echoed in my bones. We talked for a long time about pain, about pressure, about what it means to be both an artist and a human. When the call ended, the sun was rising, warming the curtains with soft gold. For the first time in a long time, morning didn't feel threatening. It felt like permission. I walked to my desk, opened my laptop, and stared at the blank screen. My team had sent a statement for me to post polished, diplomatic, safe. Ali. I deleted it. Then I began typing my own statement, raw, honest, shaking. I am not perfect. I do not get everything right. I lose my temper. I feel hurt. I feel pressure. I feel human. Yesterday, I didn't walk out because I hate anyone. I walked out because I couldn't betray myself anymore. I read it through once, twice, not to edit the pain out, but to make sure it was real. Then I posted it, no turning back. Within minutes, the world exploded again, but this time differently. Celebrities, artists, musicians, psychologists, even other talk show hosts began speaking up, not about drama, but about mental health, authenticity, and humanity in the entertainment industry. Then the twist I never expected happened. My phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. Jimmy Fallon. I froze for a full 10 seconds before opening it. I read your statement. I watched back the episode. I think I pushed too hard. I'm sorry. If you're open to it, I'd like to talk not as host and guest, but as two people. I stared at the message, speechless. No tabloid, no managers, no cameras, just two humans who had messed up, both hurt, both pressured, both flawed. I didn't reply right away. I needed time. Time to heal. Time to choose. But that message told me something the world kept forgetting. Conflict doesn't make someone a villain. Honesty doesn't make someone dangerous. Feeling doesn't make someone weak. I stepped out onto my balcony, breathing in the chilly morning air. Below, fans were still there, tired, quiet, but still waiting. I waved. They screamed. And for the first time since the nightmare began, I smiled. Not the idol smile, not the promotional smile, a real one. Because I finally understood they don't love the perfect version of me. They love me, flawed, emotional, real. And no matter what the world tries to take from me, I am not going anywhere. Not anymore. If you're still here, uh, if you watched until this very last moment, then I want to speak directly to you. I want to speak to you, the person who stayed. These past days have been some of the hardest of my life. I didn't just walk off a stage, I walked away from a version of myself that I no longer wanted to live as. I didn't explode on national television because I wanted attention or drama. I reached a breaking point, a moment where silence became more painful than speaking up. I'm human, and that's enough. Thank you for staying with me tonight. Thank you for listening with your heart, not with the headlines. Thank you for letting me be Kim Taehyung, not the idol, not the fantasy, not the character, but the person. Good night. And please, take care of your heart the way you helped me take care of mine.